History is all around us. It's in the parks where we run, under the paths we walk, and yes, in the museums throughout the Houston area. Hi there, I'm KHU 11 digital anchor Brandy Smith. In this episode of Hidden Gems, we'll show you some historical hotspots, places you will want to add to your must-visit list. We're going to start in Huntsville with one of the fathers of Texas. His name was the first word spoken on the moon, but Sam Houston is still really considered just a Texas figure. The museum at his former home hopes to change that. President, governor, general, congressman, senator. Sam Houston held a lot of titles in his life, which ended in this room in 1863. His funeral happened upstairs in the Steamboat House, one of several Houston homes on the grounds of the Sam Houston Memorial Museum.
We have 15 acres of property that once belonged to Sam and his family.
The Woodland home is still located on its original site.
During most of the year now, we have interpreters who are outside in historic clothes.
At the Woodland home, you'll see real letters written between Houston and his wife. They're changed out every so often, so are the vignettes inside.
To be able to give people a glimpse of their daily life, that's how we interpret, and that's what we interpret, and that's, we base everything that we do on those documents that we have.
The grounds include a store, a number of cabins, and even a working blacksmith shop. It's free to explore the grounds here at Sam Houston Memorial Museum, but if you want to go more in depth, if you want to see artifacts, you're going to have to pay admission to go inside.
We have the largest single collection of Sam Houston related items, so you can see cool things like Houston's vest. He would wear it in the Senate often. He'd say, I'm just like a leopard, I never change my spots, kind of deal.
The vest is actually Jaguar, a gift from his Cherokee friends.
Don't let that ruin a good story.
The museum also highlights the Battle of San Jacinto.
Because Sam Houston is, one of the quote-unquote fathers of Texas, we have a lot of early Texas-related things as well.
Museum Director Derek Birdsall hopes this pioneer's career will provide a modern lesson in citizenship.
If we can get people to look at the variety of things that Houston did over his career with a variety of people, maybe we can start those conversations ourselves.
Historical interpreters can add a lot to your experience, especially when you're learning about life in Texas 200 years ago. If modern living is getting to you, take a trip back in time at the George Ranch Historical Park in Richmond.
Our mission is to teach students about Texas history really in about a 100-year time frame from the 1830s to the 1930s.
The story is told through 4 generations of a real Texas family by interpreters who interact with visitors.
They're costumed to the time frame. They're at homes or in settings that are similar to what would have been in that time frame to really give people an experience of what it might have been like to live during that time.
At the Jones Stock Farm, you can explore a dog trot log cabin.
There they will see what it was like to really be a pioneer and how they cooked, how they ate, how they slept, how they made their way in Texas.
Flash forward to the 1860s. In post-Civil War Texas, the Ryan Prairie Home was built.
There you get a glimpse of the second generation of the family. A very nice, actually, kitchen and dining area that we use frequently. We still cook there in the stove.
The family's 3rd generation is highlighted at the Davis Victorian Complex, complete with a blacksmith shop.
Which most people find very fascinating because they understand the concept of blacksmithing, but they've never seen it in action.
You can also walk through a cattle car, a sharecropper's cabin, and this mansion.
A very good demonstration of the Victorian-style home and decorations and lifestyle.
Finally, the 1930s, when what started as a modest homestead had evolved into a ranch house and a cattle complex, which is part of a show for visitors.
It's not like being at Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. You're not way far away.
The cowboys demonstrate sorting and roping.
And then we have the fun of running the cattle through the dipping vat. And I'm not going to tell too much about that because people need to come and see it.
The location of the ranch house has a lot of significance for the family because it's the site where 2 other homes were previously built.
It holds kind of a special place in our heart because it was the location where these families lived through the generations.
You can explore it all on Saturdays when the George Ranch Historical Park is open to the public. We have information about admission and hours on khou.com. Not all pioneer stories have a happy ending. A cemetery in Spring tells the tale of an unsolved murder. The One She name is all over Spring. On the former saloon turned cafe, on a high school campus, and on this cemetery, almost hidden between the feeder road and the northbound lanes of I-45. This is where one of the founding families in Spring is laid to rest.
It is the cemetery of one of the first German immigrants who came to the town of Spring, Carl Wunschie Sr.
Historian Margaret Smith says Wunschie and his brothers landed in Galveston around 1848 and started walking north until they found what is now Spring.
Carl Wunschie started buying land and farming, and he was very, very successful. He and a gentleman named Robinson and the Klein family, they were, especially Wunschie, was very instrumental in the development of the town of Spring.
The Wunschies started a lumber mill. They opened up the saloon, and they were at the center of one of Harris County's most notorious cold cases.
To me, it's a fascinating story, which I doubt there'll ever be an answer to.
Olena Wunschie died on May 6, 1929. She was just 21.
She and her boyfriend, he was taking her home. Somehow they were accosted and murdered, and their bodies were found in 2 different places, I think.
The crime was never solved, but hopefully Olena is at peace here, surrounded by her family, including Carl.
His name lives on.
Some of the best spots to learn about local history are local libraries. Books can teach us so much about history and the world around us. So can the building that houses them, like the Rosenberg Library in Galveston.
Our claim to fame is we are the oldest continuously operated public library in the state of Texas. We have been in business since 1871.
The building went up a few years later.
The original building, we call it the Rosenberg Wing now. It was built in 1904, and it served as the library for about 60 some odd years. And then they raised funds and built what's called the Moody Wing.
The new wing is where you'll find the traditional library. Books, computers, even Rose, the camera-shy blue-tongued skink. The historic wing features study rooms, reading rooms, and an ever-changing gallery of Galveston art.
The size of this library and the breadth of the resources that we have far exceeds what most towns of 50,000 could ever expect to have.
So yes, by all means, when you visit Rosenberg Library, check out a book, but also check out the incredible history this place has to offer.
We have a large museum collection that focuses on, again, early Texas history, so anything Civil War and earlier for the whole state, we try to document, and then anything Galveston related from prehistory to the present.
Pieces from that collection are used in the Treasure of the Month on display in the Moody Wing, like these items that tell the story of Galveston's trolley.
It's amazing.
They've also formed a new exhibit on the Great Storm of 1900. In it, you can listen to oral histories from the storm survivors.
People coming in here.
Read a handwritten letter about what happened, and take in the surreal images captured in the wake of the deadliest natural disaster in Texas history.
That's the kind of stuff you can learn by coming here.
You can't talk about buildings with amazing history without mentioning Rice University. Its campus is peppered with surprises. Let's start at the start. What is now called Lovett Hall.
It's the first building built on the Rice campus.
The focal point here is called the Sally Port, this archway. You could spend an entire day examining all of the intricate stonework done by one man, Oswald Lassig. But keep an eye out and up for the freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior. Just down the courtyard is Anderson Hall. If you've ever taken a tour of campus, you've probably made a stop at the Frog Wall. And if you've never taken that tour and are wondering, why do they call it that? Well, that's why.
Students came along and realized if you run your finger down the hole, it makes a kind of a Bronx cheer kind of sound. I've heard it described as the frogs that they might have had on campus at one point.
From making sound to making gold, this is an enigma, a kind of riddle used by alchemists that purports to decree the recipe to make gold. Symbols are also an important feature on Duncan Hall. Built in 1996, the architect described his idea for the home of the Rice University Electrical and Computer Engineering program as a spaceship just touched down, but ready to take off at any moment. It is definitely out of this world. One of so many buildings here with stories and secrets.
People are very attached to the architecture.
So this isn't exactly a hidden gem, but it is a really cool feature. All of the bricks used in Rice buildings, they come from the same quarry in Louisiana, and this is known as the Rice palette. These aren't painted, it's the natural colors. Hopefully you'll notice all those details the next time you're on campus. And hey, the next time you visit Memorial Park, think about how much Houston history you're passing by.
Prior to being Memorial Park, this had been a military training facility to serve World War I.
Camp Logan stretched across more than 7,000 acres in Houston, home to thousands of soldiers training to fight abroad. When the war ended and the camp shut down, the city of Houston opted to turn this 1,500 acres into a park.
Memorial Park was named to honor those who served.
Few people know as much about the park's history as Shelley Arnold. She leads the Memorial Park Conservancy, which put together a master plan that the City Council approved in 2015.
And the master plan contains a number of projects, some of which actually directly honor those who served here in Memorial Park in what was then Camp Logan.
Some of those projects are already complete.
Where we're standing right now was a road that led into Camp Logan. The way we honor that in this project is with this axis. So we have an axis of monuments and an axis of trees, and it leads straight down to Hines Lake and then across the lake.
The new buildings that went up as part of the Eastern Glades project are inspired by the tents that housed soldiers at Camp Logan as well.
It's utilitarian, it's pitched, it's kind of low slung, it's open. It looks a little temporary, like the tents.
The camp did have some permanent structures, and deep in the trees that surround the loop, you can see their remnants, fragments of history, hidden for now. These aren't far from the 370th Prairie, named for the 370th Infantry Regiment, an African-American regiment commanded entirely by black officers.
Because of the discriminatory laws during the time of World War I, it was not allowed to serve with the U.S. military. It served instead with the French military and was the most decorated regiment of any in World War I.
While the regiment was from Illinois, the soldiers trained at Camp Logan, living here while they did.
We have been developing this prairie and restoring the site where they camped, which is right here along the easement, and it will be part of our Memorial Groves project to honor all of those who served.
Its origins stem from Camp Logan, but Memorial Park has generated history of its own since its creation.
So when you come to Picnic Loop, what you might think are, wow, those are really old tables. I wonder why they don't replace those tables. They're actually artifacts of Memorial Park and perhaps the nation's history.
Conservation experts believe they were built in the 1930s as part of the Civilian Conservation Corps. That means they've been here for going on a century.
And they are a really important part of Memorial Park's history.
You'll find them in the Picnic Loop, perhaps best known as being where the Rodeo Houston trail riders come in to set up camp, a tradition that started more than 60 years ago.
It's part of the park's history, it's part of the city's history, it's part of the region's history.
History that is living and breathing, just like the Houstonians who fill its trails. One of the other popular parks in Houston has a treasure buried underneath it. It may not have much monetary value, but its place in Houston history is priceless.
This is just one of those places where you can learn about Houston's water system. Most people don't think about where their water came from.
Built in 1926, this 87,000 square foot underground reservoir could hold 15 million gallons of Houston's drinking water.
Most of it was pumped from underground, and this was just a storage space.
A leak prompted the city of Houston to decommission the reservoir in 2007 and schedule its demolition a few years later. That's when the Buffalo Bayou Partnership stepped in.
This whole project is a project of Buffalo Bayou Partnership to revitalize Houston's historical waterway, which is Buffalo Bayou.
In 2015, KHOU 11 was the first TV station to climb into what was being called the Cistern before its renovations and opening in 2016.
It'd be nice if we could dry it so people could come see it and walk through it.
When you come for a tour these days, you don't have to climb down a shaft. Double doors along Sabine Street open to a tunnel that leads you into this piece of Houston history.
It's made out of multiple grades of concrete, one of them being a marine grade concrete. So we need to keep water down there and keep it preserved just in case it tries to crack.
The water's reflection extends 221 25-foot columns reminiscent of ancient Roman cisterns, the inspiration for the reservoir's new name. The cistern's atmosphere is unique, so are its acoustics.
This place has a 17 to 19 second reverberation time. So if you would like to, you could scream for us real quick and we can hear the echo.
Another important part of early Houston's infrastructure, air travel. You can travel back in time at the 1940 Air Terminal Museum. Ah, the golden age of air travel, complete with glamorous outfits and gourmet meals.
It was quite an event for people to get to do that.
From 1940 to 1955, that event got off the ground here.
It started out as the first airport in Houston. It was the terminal building, so it was kind of like the original hobby. People would come into the atrium and get their tickets at the ticket booth and go out and get on the plane.
Today, Maggie Brown oversees what is now the 1940 Air Terminal Museum, giving visitors a chance to explore what things were like in that era.
The office here, we have all of our modern 1940 equipment, and so it's nice for young people to come in and see what things were like then, and just tell the story of what people were experiencing in 1940.
Visitors to the museum can also take a tour of one of the planes of the era, this Lockheed Lodestar. Along with permanent exhibits, it also has temporary shows like Fashion Takes Flight.
It tells the story of the evolution of the flight attendant / stewardess uniforms from about 1950 to the early 2000s. You can see the story of not only the way the fashion changed, but kind of the role that women played in a professional environment, especially in aviation.
You can see all of that inside of this building, which opened in 1940 and was designed by Joseph Finger, the same man who designed Houston City Hall.
It's very timeless, so you can really take some beautiful photos.
Events director Juan Ortiz says the museum hosts everything from weddings to dinners to car shows and more.
Third Saturdays of each month for the museum are kind of like our open house day. It's where we invite the community to explore and check out the exhibit.
Do you feel like enough people know about it?
No, no, not at all.
Now you do. So consider this your invitation to visit this piece of Houston history.
So we can, be here for another, 80 years.
We've covered a lot of Houston and Texas history, but our area also offers up plenty of opportunities to learn about history of the world, like in River Oaks, where you can take a trip to 18th century Europe. The home at 1406 Kirby looks like so many of its River Oaks neighbors. With its gated driveway, sprawling garden, and breathtaking facade.
I'm deeply fond of it.
But this house has a name.
Renzi.
And a purpose.
When people come here, it's a sort of quick trip to Europe, which I think is a really wonderful thing to be able to give to Houstonians.
Renzi opened to the public in 1999. It is one of 2 home museums for the Museum of Fine Arts Houston.
Well, House Museum is exactly what you would think. It is a museum that was a house, is a house, was owned and lived in by our collectors, Harris and Carol Sterling Masterson. When they passed away, it was given as a gift to the museum.
Not just the house, but also the exceptional art collection within its walls.
The collectors were particularly interested in European art and decorative arts. And when I say decorative arts, I mean porcelain, furniture, silver, anything that you sort of live with, that people lived with in the past, they also collected.
Collected and lived with. Each room, from the master bedroom to the dining room to the, yes, ballroom, is filled with the collection's pieces.
I think because they lived here, lived in this house, the house still feels like people scale, and it is a very happy house.
A legendary River Oaks party house, now a unique museum setting. One you could almost imagine living into.
Don't we wish everybody could?
Want to go even further back and farther away? Lucky Land, a Chinese amusement park, offers a beautiful way to explore the culture's history.
We at Lucky Land.
It is easy to tell.
We started about
that this is Nita Lee's passion.
2014.
That's when she and her husband began assembling her dream.
To bring all the stuff.
The stuff came from what used to be the Forbidden Gardens in Katy. When it shut down, Lee brought many of the items to this 2-acre plot.
I just said, this is the treasure. I have to save it.
The adventure at Lucky Land begins before you really even walk through the gates, with all of these 3D rooms, places where you can take photos that really stretch the imagination, and then you can share them on social media.
We have all kind of happiness, all kind of how old are you? You will enjoy over here.
Beyond the gate, you can hop on a rickshaw for a quick roll around the park.
We preserve everything.
To see the Panda Garden, the Kung Fu statues, the Happy Buddhas, and the models of the Forbidden City and the Terracotta Army.
They see all the culture, that another side of the world. And I believe that if people, they know the culture like their neighbor. If you know your neighbor, you know how they do, how they're living, and then you can be friends.
It's a message that may be more important now than ever before.
I'm so proud.
For Nita, Lucky Land is a way to connect with her Houston neighbors, and for those neighbors to learn a little bit about the rich history of her culture.
I come here every day. I'm so happy and exciting.
Do you have a hidden gem we need to highlight? Reach out. You can email me at bsmith@khou.com. Just let me know where the spot is and what makes it special. We also want to know if you visit one of the gems we've shared. You can share photos and videos from that visit with the Near Me section of the KHU 11 News app. And maybe you just want to explore by watching for a bit. In other Hidden Gems episodes, we show you public art in our area, plus the hidden gems you can check out for free. Or you could just watch individual stories. There are dozens now. Those are all available on our KHU 11 YouTube page or via the free KHU 11 Plus apps on Fire TV and Roku. Just keep an eye out for this playlist, Living in the Lone Star.